What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host, and it's a Tuesdays with Brady. Pew, 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 pew. It's actually Wednesday.
What's today, though, Will?
Wednesday.
Okay.
Tuesday days?
I always make that mistake, too.
I know. You know what? Tuesday and Wednesday during the NFL season is really just sort of this, like, meh, of like, whatever, you know? Because it's like Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Sunday. Soon we'll have Saturday football. Not really excited about it. I don't like Saturday NFL football.
Wednesday, you usually get the initial injury report because that's when guys practice for the first time during the week. So that gives you a little bit of something to talk about if there's a significant injury. Like today, we had
something to talk about.
Yeah. I was about to say, we
Rodgers
had
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let's get into the football talk a minute into this show. Let's not even dally around. Let's dive right in. Aaron Rodgers. Who else would we talk about? Aaron Rodgers. The Jets officially activated his 21-day practice window to return from the injured reserve. What this means is that he has 21 days to practice. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just in case people don't know, he can be evaluated by the Jets over the next 21 days and practice with the team. It still count as an IR guy, which is key because
a roster spot.
He doesn't take up a roster spot, but he's allowed to practice with him. They can evaluate him, and at any point in that 21 days, if the Jets, and they have to do it by what, Saturday at midnight, maybe?
Yep.
Saturday at midnight, they can activate him, and usually it's around Saturday afternoon if they do it. You saw that with Jonathan Taylor recently. You'll see it with Justin Jefferson next week. But they can activate him at any point, and he can play for them, meaning Aaron Rodgers could, in fact, come back this year on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Deuce, as our resident Jets expert. How likely do you think it is that Aaron Rodgers comes back?
10 being like guaranteed he's coming back.
10 being like he's starting this week, and a 1 being this is all a facade designed to give Aaron Rodgers attention and try to motivate the defense to play well enough to steal a game or two and keep them in the playoff race.
I'm gonna go with a hard 2. Yeah, I know Brady's probably surprised by that answer. I mean,
that
we just look at it, right? You got to look at it, right? 21-day window. If you look at the 3 games the Jets have in that 21 game window, right? They have the Falcons at home this week, Texans at home the following week, but it's that third game, right? At the Miami Dolphins on that third game. Like, that would be the game. Now, again, Rodgers could be elevated and come back a week after that, but that would be the game I think a lot of people are circling. I think he even came out and said end of December is where his goal was to potentially come back. He wanted to start practicing around this time. But just from what we've seen from the offense and it being anemic as it is, I mean, will the Jets be able to squeak out 3 in a row? Because that's the only way it makes sense for Rodgers to come back. Because if they do win 3 in a row, then they're back in this thing, right? They're back in the thick of the playoff hunt. But if they just drop one of those games, then it's almost for sure over for the Jets in regards to going to the playoffs. So that's why I put it at a 2. I would have put it at a 1. But we've seen crazier things, guys, right? We saw just 2 years ago, or not even 2 years ago, last year, Aaron Rodgers, right? How many games did they have to win in a row to get back in the hunt? And then if they just would have won week 18, the Packers would have been in the playoffs, right? So I think they ended up winning like 5 in a row. Again, Rodgers was quarterback, and that defense was playing a lot better for the Green Bay Packers. So don't be looking at me crazy, Brady.
Yeah, because they're in tough mode this week. It's fair to say that, right? The only way to assure yourself a spot in the playoffs is to win out. You got to get to 10. That's the only way to feel like pretty good about your chances at that point, right?
Yeah.
Given the schedule that you've got ahead of you, because you got the Browns who are going to be a wild card contender. The Dolphins, obviously, right now leading the division. Obviously, they're a playoff spot contender. The Texans, also a playoff contender.
Yeah.
So when you look at those 3 in particular, obviously huge matchups in that context. But I think to assure yourself a spot in the playoffs, you got to win them all. Now, in regards to Rodgers, I don't know that it matters to him necessarily if they're in the playoff hunt or not. I think maybe he just wants to prove to everyone that he can come back in this span of time and do something that we've never seen a professional athlete that I can recall in this short amount of time come back. So I think maybe that's more the motivating factor than anything else. It is interesting that the Commanders game happens to be Christmas Eve. Maybe he wants to give a little early Christmas gift to all those out there who would love to see Aaron Rodgers play for the Jets. So maybe that's kind of where this timeline connects and where it makes some sense to bring him back. But either way, maybe it's about more than that. Maybe it's about him giving Jets fans what they were clamoring for, hoping for, his teammates, his coaching staff, the organization. The last 3 games of the season, if indeed he comes back at the end of this window. And maybe that's what it's about. Just trying to build some momentum into the offseason to prepare for 2024. And so I don't know that it matters quite as much where they're at in the playoff hunt and all that. Maybe he just wants to get in there and play and do what he came to the Jets to do. I will say this, though. I am excited for the media there in New York because, it's going to be Rodgers. Rodgers. Oh, look at Rodgers as he goes onto the field. He's prancing like a gazelle. It's like Steve Irwin. But you don't think so, Will? You're not feeling this right now? Like,
that was a little
came out of nowhere.
I thought it was a little British, honestly. Was that Australian?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds similar, right? I mean,
have you been watching Love Island Australia? Is that what's going on here?
Goodness.
No. I would love to go to Australia. It wasn't such a long trip, but it still doesn't. It's Rodgers' watch. We're watching for Rodgers to come back in.
It's Rodgers' watch. You got to get. I think you're getting a little deep.
It's Rodgers'
watch.
You gotta have that scratchy throat.
Yeah.
Look at him as he goes around the field.
Have you watched Last Stop Laramie on HBO? It's
dude, it's football season. All right, you can throw it on.
Exactly.
We're not watching anything else other than games and tape and games and everyone's a
football guy. He's a football guy. I didn't watch anything but football.
Hey, bro, I've got to coach soccer right now outside of my normal work obligations.
Sounds like something that isn't football related to me. Sounds like something that's not football related to me. It's football season, pal.
If I'm watching a television, it's going to be a sports. It's going to be college or NFL football. All right.
Well, I was home.
Box, okay. But
my mom,
our box is bigger. Leger can attribute that. He's also watching all.
My mom.
That's the only thing I'm watching is football right now.
We don't want to hear about your mom, Will.
My mother, the Reverend Ann Brinson, over Thanksgiving. My parents were in Indonesia, as you guys know. They came back and they were like, it's like a 48-hour travel window, and they were loopy as hell. And like my mom got on this thing where she was like roasting everybody, just like uncorking. She was like, Will sucks at picking movies. I was like, what the hell, Mom?
Oh my God.
You're savage. So I was like, I'm finding something great tonight. I picked Last Stop at Laramie, which is this HBO.
Movie?
What's that?
What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is probably Fletch.
That's it. That's what you're gonna stick by.
What's your favorite movie?
Is that what we're gonna stick by?
First off, bad question. It should get to your genre. Like Leger, what's your favorite comedy movie?
Oh, Harlem Nights. Not even close.
Oh, okay. All right, that's solid. I mean, Fletch. I guess I'll give you that, Will. If that's what you want to
give me. Fletch. Fletch is an all-time movie. But the point being is, Last Stop Laramie is a documentary on HBO about a town in Australia that has 11 people.
Wyoming.
No, 11 people. 11 people live there. 11.
So some of us watch college football. I'm just saying. Some of us understand where it's at.
This was on like a Wednesday night, and my parents wanted to watch something. They wanted to watch the NBA. Sorry. They were like, hey, do you guys want to watch some action? They're like, no, pick a movie, dude.
Nothing wrong with some good action, man.
I love action, but my parents aren't junkies like that. They watch the NFL. Anyway, the point being is there's 11 people that live in this town in Australia. It's all your fault for bringing up an Australian accident. And one of them gets murdered or disappears.
So one of 10 people down under that could have done it.
There's only what? 9
exactly.
Other suspects?
But there's no body. He just disappears. It's actually a really interesting. Highly recommend you check it out. And this has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers, except that Brady was like, "Oh crikey, look at Aaron Rodgers coming across the field."
I would love to see one of those videos like put together. You know, because wasn't there like a one done about the honey badger? Like do that with like Rodgers coming back though. Like Here's
the honey badger. He's one of the
We're gonna monitor and see how he's moving, how healthy he is. Is he back to his habitat on the football field and dissecting things?
Have you ever seen the one where what kind of animal is it that's chased by like thousands of snakes up the like across the It's like the
mongoose or something,
it's the mongoose, right? He's like, and the unsuspecting mongoose isn't aware that there are 10,000 rabid pythons about to eat it. And he like takes off running. You're like, ah! It's like so anxiety filled. Anyway, I think it's cool that Rodgers might come back and play. But I think the bigger concern is like, what if he comes back and he like gets hurt again?
That's the thing. So he went on Pat McAfee's show and said we have to be in contention. I know Brady. It would make sense just knowing the competitor that Rodgers is to say like I want to do something that nobody said I could ever do or even think about doing. I mean, he's kind of already defeated that feat, right? As far as like being on the sideline pregame and then throwing pregame, like literally a month after having Achilles injuries. Like Brady, we've known guys that have had Achilles tear. They're usually still on that little tricycle like a month out, right? This dude was on the field taking half drop steps, which to me I've never seen. Yeah, so like to me, he's kind of already, all the naysayers and everything, he's kind of already defeated that notion as far as being able to just do the bare minimum in that allotted time frame. But playing in a game, Brady, you know this is a whole nother animal, right? Especially, I heard you talk about this earlier on HQ, talking about the field turf at MetLife, right? That's where he tore his Achilles. You're talking about being back on that field, not fully healed. Offensive line has been, has struggled this year. Do you really want to put yourself at that risk if the Jets aren't currently in the playoff race?
Well, and Leger, you can speak to this. How many guys have torn up their knee, their Achilles? I mean, on that turf.
My ankle was never the same. I hurt my ankle on that turf, and it's never been the same. I have ligament damage. I have necrosis.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at it, right, Raheem Mostert, I believe, messed his knee up. Nick Bosa tore ACL there.
Jimmy G
ended up having season-ending, I think an ankle injury there.
I think it was hyperextended, or maybe something like that.
So it's Jalen Phillips just tore his Achilles there. We saw Aaron Rodgers tear his Achilles there. So it's been multiple guys. And I remember when MetLife was first built, and I played there, I want to say in 2011. That's where I hurt my ankle. I got cut block on the ankle, and my other foot was stuck in the ground. And I've had that ankle issue ever since then, and I still have it today. So,
are you serious?
Yeah.
I think that's so underrated. I think that's so underrated. Like how long these injuries linger with you. Like Brady, you and I have talked about this. Like you have, like I mean, I know it's. I don't think that like the average football fan is thinking about how like an ankle injury, like you're dealing with it. What like Brady, your list frank surgery you had. That you
metal in my foot for life, dude. Like
exactly for life.
Case goes off the metal detector at the airport. Like,
Brady, I know that because we do the podcast. I'm trying to bring light to your suffering as a former athlete because I'm guessing that like not everybody in this podcast is like, oh, of course, Brady Quinn has metal in his foot. Everyone knows that.
Let me give you a great quote to live by. Okay, and it's by the one legendary Lou Holtz. All right, I think it goes something along the lines of like.
Please say Lou Holtz's voice. Please say.
I was wondering if he's going to do that.
I can't do a good Lou Holtz impression, but 90% of people in the world don't care about your problems. The other 10% are glad you have them. So the whole gist of that is 100% of the people really don't want to hear about your problems. All right, and probably the 10% you probably shouldn't be telling them about your problems.
I like when people say, "How's it going?" You're like, "I can't complain." Not that anybody would care if I did. I mean, who cares if you complain all you want? Work hard.
I just was trying to be open to that. Oh, fantastic. Couldn't be better. All right.
Exactly.
How's the weather? Sure is sunny out, ain't it? Awful chilly out today, isn't it?
All right. What else we got, Will?
Turf monster. Let's talk about the turf in general. Let's keep talking about that. We're still going to roll it into injuries, but like how do you guys feel about the turf? Like, I think I guess it's sort of like I think it's kind of underreported how the NFL and even frankly the NFLPA. Okay, go ahead.
No, let's just stop blaming turf. All right.
Okay. Oh,
if you look at grass and turf, all right, the data will show you that if the turf is maintained the way it's supposed to, the data is not that far off between the two. Okay.
Yeah.
What we don't ever talk about and should talk about are cleats. The cleats have gotten lighter, cheaper, and I think they're more susceptible to players getting injured.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that like no one ever talks about. Like I'd rather see data dating back to, I think 2012 was the first year that Nike took over as the apparel provider. And I'd love to see the data from that point moving forward to see if we've had an increase in athletes, and depending on the type of cleat that they're wearing, and whether it's a speed cleat or low top, high top, what have you. I'd really want to look at that data because I feel like you aren't seeing quite as much or quite as many of these sorts of injuries even dating back to times when we had AstroTurf. And obviously Reebok was the supplier then. And I don't know because what happens is if guys don't have apparel deals with Under Armour or Nike or what have you, they default back to whatever the league's apparel provider is. So that would be Nike in this case. So most guys don't have apparel deals. So if they don't, they're wearing some sort of Nike cleat. And my issue is, like, I feel like that always gets lost when we talk about these injuries, is we never look at the actual shoes they're wearing. And that probably, at least in my opinion, I think plays the biggest role. Every single injury I ever had was on a Nike cleat. And look, I'm not trying to say that all of a sudden, like, Nike is to blame 100% for all of it. But when I think about some of the cleats that I wore and how easily they wore out, how flimsy they were, how I had to have orthotics in them to strengthen the lower foot plate, like all those things. And Leger, I don't know if you felt similar, but like, yeah, there's no doubt, like, I'd rather play on grass than on turf. But that being said, I still feel like that whatever I'm wearing on my feet is still paramount to whatever surface I'm playing on in regards to how my foot feels, bends, and all that in those situations.
Well, I would ask you this, Brady, when you're talking about injuries as far as in the league, not college, right? Or you're talking about college too?
I'm talking about both. But I mean, but the data, obviously, if you're in the NFL, you want the sample size from the NFL.
Correct.
Because that's specifically what I'm referring to here when you look at the data coming from, 2012 afterwards, and then before that with Reebok.
Well, and I would point out too, like, the one thing that Nike was doing for a long time in the early 2010s was pushing Flyknit as something that they wanted to be like the future of the sport, because it was, it was so light, it was light, breathable, you were faster on your feet. But then you saw, like, was he wearing Nikes when he blew out his? Yeah, and like he blew out his shoe. And he blew out his tire. If you go to Nike.com/Flyknit, you have Nike Flyknit for running. Now it makes total sense for running, because you're lateral, you're not cutting laterally when you're running.
Lateral stuff,
right?
Yeah.
And if you look at their basketball Flyknit shoes, they've been reinforced completely differently on the outside, which I think is about the lateral cuts and all that, because they were having issues. I think Kobe had an issue too. I think Kobe's knee injury when we got fixed in Germany, he was wearing Flyknit when that happened. And then you have the Flyknit for soccer. Makes total sense, because you need a light, breathable shoe. You do need to cut, but you're nothing for football anymore, which I think is interesting. They got rid of it for it's not available for football, because the football cleat needs to be sturdier, because the impact is completely different.
Well, and just to further that point, the tough part is, if you do have an apparel deal, you can't spat, right? You can't tape over top of it. You can't cover up the logo. Some of those times they won't even let you cover up any portion of the shoe, because they want to make sure when you're on TV, when you're playing, everyone sees it. And so that becomes then a liability, because you're taping your foot, but then if it loosens up, some guys like to tape their feet and spat and tape over top to create that extra layer of restriction to be able to hold it together better. And so that's the other part of like the business side of it, that sometimes it's not even as safe, even with the way you're going about wearing that cleat, because of the rules and how you have to show the logo and everything else. So again, I don't want like Nike to come after me or anything like that. I'm just saying,
I love Nike. I love Nike. Don't come after us.
Not many people have brought this question up. And I just know from the injuries that I've sustained that it was always a Nike cleat. And every time I say something to someone who's in the know about, they're still like, "Yep, you're onto something there." And they're like, but they won't say anything, because they obviously know how much Nike's paying them to be the apparel provider for the NFL. There's not really much you can say at that point.
Yeah, there's so much to dive in here. Like when me and Brady were in the league, he talked about it. Reebok was the official partner of the NFL, right? So I actually had a Reebok deal my first 3 years in the league before Nike came over. And to his point, right, I wanted to spat but couldn't, right? They actually fined me one game for spatting because I covered the Reebok sign.
That's insane.
But I actually got my ankle injury in a Reebok shoe, and it happened when I wasn't spatted, right? So I was pissed off about that. There was something that Brady said that really resonated with me. He was saying, as far as if you do the research between turf fields and grass fields, right, and if there's actual upkeep. So that's the biggest thing, right, Brady? You know this because you played in the winter city, right? You played in Cleveland. I played in New York most of my career. When it snows, and I don't think people realize this, and they have to clear off the field of the snow, you know how much rubber is taken off the field? So I want to know, I would love to see the analytics and the data behind that when that happens. Like, I played in the AFC East, right? That's Gillette Stadium, which is up there in Massachusetts. That's Buffalo, and that's MetLife. And then Miami has grass, right? So for a lot of my career, I was playing in those games in the winter. So, like, I mean, Buffalo, when it gets cold and it snows, it's literally like concrete out there trying to cut on there. Same thing with Gillette Stadium. Same thing with MetLife. So, yeah, I know what the analytics and the research says is in regards to turf and grass fields. But I would love to see in specific months, late November all the way through February, how that number changes, because it's hard to upkeep that field because so much rubber pellet is getting taken off the field because of the snow when they clear the field.
Yeah, I mean, usually they do and I've seen them do this before, because back when Baltimore had field turf, they would actually do a test. So they drop something on to see like the bounciness in the spring of it.
Yeah.
I remember being out there warming up one time when they were testing. I was like, all right, that's at least good to see.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I was like, all right, they're testing it. I don't see them putting any extra infill, so I assume
Correct.
it's passing the test.
Yeah.
You know, we never really know. Look, we all know that the field service is there because it allows them then to do more in that particular service throughout the course of the week, football season, to make more money. You know,
Nickelback concerts and whatnot.
Exactly.
Yeah, or Creed, depending on if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan and how that's helped propel that team this year. But the general point is like, obviously, you're not going to have in many places the ability to have, at least not in a cheap manner, a grass field indoors, which we know a lot of stadiums, especially up north, they want to be able to put domes. And in order to do that, you have to take what's the soccer team that's got the grass field that folds out underneath, and it's like they have a whole thing helping to grow the grass. What's the big soccer team?
It's Tottenham, isn't it?
I don't think it's Tottenham. Maybe it's
Manchester
Tottenham.
United.
I think it's wherever Manchester plays, maybe. But anyway, one of those fields have this elaborate system. It's ridiculously expensive, but they maintain it because their roster is ridiculously expensive. So
it's probably Man U.
Well, no, I know it is Tottenham because I remember when the NFL went there, they switched it out and put turf on for the football players, but then they switched it to the grass for the soccer players,
which made no sense. So
yeah.
I think there's some if you're looking at like grass in the wintertime, like we all think, oh, it should be softer, right? Well, it depends. Like sometimes, like where it's painted, that stuff freezes. That's actually ice. It's slick.
It hurts.
And they've got it. And like the ground is hard, right? Especially when it freezes over at certain those frigid temperatures. So as much as you're making a case Leger for like, hey, how many of those pellets are still there when they brush it off? Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're on field turf or grass. At that point, it's going to be pretty hard, pretty rough. I mean, I think when you're in adverse conditions, you're probably more, or I should say, less at risk to get injured. Depending on the cleat, doesn't really matter because your footing's not great anyway. And so you're not applying the same force. You're not cutting as hard. You're not in those situations. So, again, I would just like to see a study and the data from the past decade or 11 years since Nike's taken over in comparison to the prior decade or so to see how that's played a factor. And look, maybe there's other factors. How spread out the game is now. Guys playing more in space. Guys are able to build up more speed, sharper cuts, more aggressive cuts. Maybe that plays a role in it too, in the way some of these players have ended up hurting themselves with just, again, combined with the cleats and the surface they're playing on.
All right, let's move to the Minnesota Vikings because we had Kevin O'Connell, Vikings head coach, come out and say this after the loss. By the way, a lot of teams, 6 teams a week, 13 buys. You guys prefer a week 13 buy or like a week 5 buy or like something nice in the middle?
Want that late buy?
Whoa, no chance.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you want it in the middle, but I'd rather have it late than early.
Yeah, right.
I agree with that. It depends on how the schedule plays out. If you have an early buy and then you've got that Thursday night game like later in the season, you'd much rather that be swapped, right? Like you want an early Thursday night where you get the little longer weekend and then you get the late buy. Because when you switch it up, like you get the buy too early, it doesn't really help you. And then you get that late, especially if it's on the road, short week game. You feel
terrible.
It's
what's the most entertaining thing y'all ever did on the bye week that you can legally tell us about? Like, would you fly like?
I remember I flew to Carolina to see my wife, then my girlfriend, who tore Achilles when she was in World Championships. She literally flew from Japan straight to Carolina to get operated on by Dr. Robert Anderson. I literally flew from
Charlotte
the surgery. Yeah. Or excuse me, Charlotte. Yeah. What am I saying? I literally look at you and I just think Carolina. I don't know why.
I was like, this Dr. Robert Brinson operated on her, and frankly, really screwed her up.
The funny thing is, he's actually now in Green Bay because I saw him for my ankle.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. He moved back up there. So anyway, he's like the best. That's who everyone goes to. That's how I got consulted with for my foot.
He is to feet what Dr. James Andrews is to ACLs.
That's correct. That's how he's looked at for foot and ankle. So, and I mean, that was like probably the most entertaining thing I've ever done over the course of a bye, which isn't saying much. And I do remember at that time, like people like give me flack for doing that. I was like, well, what else would you expect me to do? You know
how it is. You're not supposed to have life. It's all football, Brady.
That's right. That's right.
I thought you'd be watching movies with your parents or something like.
I always just went back. I just went back home. I never really did anything. I know some guys that have went to like the islands or Mexico. I just always nervous about getting back on time, especially if you had a bye like in November, December with all the weather issues, especially flying up to New York. I was like, I ain't want to chance that. So
remember when the Cowboys had a bye in the playoffs and our colleague Tony Romo and Jason Witten, and at that time Tony Romo was dating Jessica Simpson, and they went down to like the Caribbean. They went to Cabo, and then Romo dropped the hold on the field goal or the extra point against the Seahawks, and they lose. Everybody's like, it's because he was in Cabo with Jason Witten.
He was getting Cabo Wabo. He was still thinking about what he
He wasn't focused.
Jessica Simpson got him drunk and took away. It's like, what are we doing here? If this guy played for any other team, nobody would care except maybe the Giants.
That is one of the biggest misnomers, I think, as far as like players. Like I know guys who like would break curfew, go out before the night before the game. They come in a ball. Like
exactly.
like they could do that. Like I could not do that. I was not that guy. So
I mean, Lawrence Taylor won MVP as a defensive player, and he was like apparently on all kinds of stuff the entire time.
Some guys like that was just how they live. That's the vibe they need to get in. Like, and I don't. It is what it is. As long as they knew what they were supposed to do when they got out there and they performed, you can't really say anything about it. So. Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry.
All right, so anyway, I derailed that with like the bye week and the stuff talk, but like the Vikings are on their bye, and Josh Dobbs is
might be on a permanent bye.
Yeah, do you think he?
Okay, can we go back? Can I ask this question?
Yeah.
Like, what? 3 of the interceptions were tipped. I know, like everyone made a big deal about it, but I was like, come on, man. Like,
I would say 1.
Oh, it was more than that.
Well, one went right through
Addison's
hands. One went right through his hands. Yeah.
Yeah, the one got tipped the line of scrimmage. Like it was more than
the one to the flat. There was no excuse for that one. That was
the bad one. That was the bad one. Yeah. But it's like everyone made a big deal about him. I'm going, hold on a second. The guy just got there. Like, does he get no? Well, I mean, no room for error.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? And they put you on a pedestal, and they can't wait to knock you off. And that's the thing. Like when he came there, we can talk about this, Brady. You know this when. You don't have film on a guy can tend to have success, right? First couple of weeks, he's just out there playing free. I think the last 2 weeks, guys have kind of seen him in the Vikings uniform for a few weeks. They kind of know how to plan against him. To your point, tip balls, you can't really do anything. Those change games, as we saw in that game last week versus Chicago Bears. But if we go back, I think it was the Denver Broncos too. A couple questionable throws in that game as well. And the thing is, people just, it was like the Cinderella story with Josh Dobbs, right? And I think people tend to forget, yes, he was winning a few games, but let's not forget at Arizona, like he started off hot, but then was having a turnover issue there too, right? And I think it says something that a team not only traded for you, but they were willing to trade you again after trading for you. Now, again, Brady, anytime you get draft capital, you definitely want to do that, right? Because they did draft.
It's a little different, though. It's a little different because they knew Kyler was coming back. So they really only had to get through 1 week.
But he was coming off an ACL, so you don't think they'd want to keep Josh Dobbs just in case something happened?
No, I mean,
they drafted Clayton Tune, but still.
Yeah. I mean, I'd put it this way, like, I think he got them through a portion of the season. And look, we can say whatever we want about what happened after the first 4 games or so. He cooled off, but like the Arizona Cardinals offense didn't look as good this past week versus the Rams. Like they've kind of cooled off since Kyler's come back. So
yeah,
I would defend him in this sense. Like he's done something that I don't think any quarterback would ever want to.
Ever.
If you look at the success of the Tom Brady's and the Peyton, they played in one system their entire career.
Correct.
I mean, maybe with the exception of Peyton when he first got to Denver, or like the Kubiak year where they changed it up a little bit when they won the Super Bowl. But like, if you're going to have success, it helps to be in the same system your entire career. So you're not concerned about learning all the language and the nuances, how you're communicating it. You know it. It's about seeing what they're doing across the field from you. So he's been able to do a tremendous job of learning an offense, being able to go out there and execute to a certain degree. And I think the tough part is like he's made some plays to help win them games. Like they're 2-2. Technically, I guess they're 1-2 because he didn't start. It was Hall.
He didn't start the one game. Yeah.
Like my thing is like we can keep looking at these breakdown and stats, but the truth of the matter is like he's helped win them games. And look, maybe they can bring in Nick Mullins, whatever else. Like I think the logic for what they're going to try to do is this: if Jefferson's back, they know how big of a difference he can be as a wide receiver. So they want to make sure there's someone who's comfortable with the offense, is going to run the.
I think Brady froze up there a little bit, but he was saying that the comfort in terms of the like running the offense. I also think too, when you look at like the Bears defense. Sorry, Brady, we lost you there for a second. But the Bears defense has been playing pretty well the last couple of weeks. Montez Sweat, nice addition. They've gotten they're much better at rushing the passer. They've been good against the run for most of the year.
Really good against the run.
Really good against the run.
They might be the best in the league against the run.
Yeah, and I think too, like you look at what Minnesota did late in that game. Yeah. Kevin O'Connell got really conservative on offense at the end.
That pissed me off.
And then Brian Flores didn't even blitz.
Yeah. Right. I mean, look, like despite how he played, they still had a chance to win. And I think what I was going to make was, Justin Jefferson is one of the best players in the NFL. So if you've got him and he's back, you want to utilize him. And they know that every time they go out to play, how teams play him is largely going to dictate what they're going to do offensively. So you want to make sure that you've got a guy back there at quarterback who understands the offense, knows how to get him the ball, is going to run exactly how Kevin O'Connell wants. I mean, I think what was the touchdown where Dobbs kind of scrambled out to the left and like jumped into the end zone. I remember seeing on the TV copy, you saw Kevin O'Connell just kind of go,
pretty much.
but it wasn't how it was supposed to be run. Correct. And I think as a play caller, especially one of the better ones in the league, like Kevin O'Connell is, you're going to go back and watch that tape and go, man, there's plays we're leaving out there. Yeah. And unfortunately, like he's not going to be able to come along fast enough to execute the way we'd like him to. And they didn't have Mullins earlier, so they had to go to Hall. Now they do have Mullins. So if that's the move they make, like I guess you can understand it because they traded for Mullins too. But I think Dobbs has done a heck of a job, man. And he helps make some things go right for sure.
Well, you talked about this, right? I mean, learning 3 different offenses, especially at the quarterback position, is unheard of. And to do it, Brady, not even in a full calendar year. Like, that's unheard of for him to do that. And another point that you really made, even though he struggled throughout that game, he still gave them an opportunity to win at the end, right? He took the lead back. And then, to your point, Will, I was screaming at the TV. Like, you throw a screen pass on 3rd and 7. Like, my thing is, the dude's already thrown for a pick, so I get you maybe being conservative. But if you have a chance to end the game in regulation, give him something easy, some rub routes. Give him something over the middle of the field, right, Brady? Like, for you to – I felt like Luke Getsy took the play calling over for Kevin O'Connell in that scenario and had that play call dialed up. Because I'm like, Luke Getsy threw about 30 screens in that game for Justin Fields, and it was awful. I just didn't see Kevin O'Connell making that same mistake. He did, and it ultimately cost him because Justin Fields made a big throw over the middle to DJ Moore and essentially won the game.
That thing
too. Yeah, so my thing is, I'm with you, Brady. I do think the Cinderella story is over, but I do think Josh Dobbs gives them an opportunity to compete, to maybe try to backdoor their way into the playoffs if they decide to stick with him. I just think that Kevin O'Connell could have helped them a little bit at the end because – to your point, when we talked about when Ken Dorsey got fired, right? If they don't have 12 men on the field, does Ken Dorsey get fired? If Josh Dobbs completes a pass over the middle of the field on 3rd and 7 and they get a first down and win the game, are we talking about Josh Dobbs being benched? No. So, like, I think the play caller could have helped him in that scenario.
I will say this, though, in defense of any coach, if you do get a win and you still look at yourself critically in the mirror and you think you can improve and you make a change, whether it's with a coach or player – like that to me is like the utmost. I think self-awareness.
Oh, for sure.
All that. Yeah. Like I have a lot more respect for guys who aren't going to use the result, all right, as a means for how they're going to make a decision. They're going to look at the entire process and be like, look, we just feel like this gives us the best chance to win, and hopefully that's what this is about. And again, Josh Dobbs has been the best story to me the entire season. He should win Comeback Player of the Year. Yeah, now, the only person that could throw a wrench in that is if Rodgers goes back.
Rodgers.
Look, I understand the DeMar Hamlin storyline. And this is no disrespect. It was an incredible,
I tell you what, hey, since we're talking like futures, we're going to talk leaders. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, why Josh Dobbs might not win the Comeback Player of the Year award next.
Ooh.
A game of honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA. Saturday, December 9th on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
So just to put a bow on that conversation we started about Josh Dobbs, I agree with you. I said before the season, DeMar Hamlin was like minus 350 to win Comeback Player of the Year award. And like, I understand the sentiment, but he doesn't play.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he got out there as almost sort of I don't want to call it ceremonial, but it was like, I mean, look, he came back from.
Yeah, literally.
He came back. He came back all right. But like, I think to me in the award has gone all over the place from injuries. Phillip Rivers got it just from throwing a bunch of interceptions. I think Mark Sanchez got it from being bad one year.
Well, I was just going to say, like, is there a criteria for it? Because
that's the question.
There's some people say, hey, why isn't Russell Wilson up for it? Which I thought was like, that makes a lot of sense. It's phenomenal, but like, did I miss something? Did he get hurt last year? Or like, how do we go? Like, I don't even know how they define the award anymore.
Rivers won it in 2013 because he had like a bunch of picks in 2012. It's not from injury necessarily.
Geno didn't play and he won it last year.
Yeah, Geno just came back from being benched.
Yeah,
or getting punched when you with the.
Oh God.
Sorry. Anyway,
were you there for that, Leger? Were you?
I was there for that.
Were you there? Were you like there for it?
Yeah, I was in the locker room when it happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Crazy.
Do you get asked about that a lot, like way too much?
All the time. One thing I will say is I am happy for my guy Geno, man. I think
I love Geno.
And he'll tell you this: he's grown a lot from that scenario. Ultimate leader now in Seattle. I think all those guys in the locker room look to him on offense. They got a heck of a schedule coming up. Starting tomorrow, right, versus the Cowboys. But I still think they find a way to get in.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be close. They got a tough schedule. All right, let's we'll play follow. Brady, we'll play follow the leader because we got look at the time. I got distracted by your dazzling shirt.
Oh God.
Who will lead the NFL in rushing yards? Christian McCaffrey is leading in the NFC. Raheem Mostert leading in the AFC. Probably not a total coincidence that both guys in the Kyle Shanahan running scheme, right? Like that's probably.
I think it's McCaffrey for two reasons. One, the system, that's part of it. That's the offense they run everything through him. And two, what they're paying him. Like they took him on. They're paying him a lot of money. Like I think you want to get as many touches as you possibly can. And he might be the MVP, or at least should be up for it. So
the offensive player of the year. Well, now what would be? I'll tell you what would be interesting is if we don't have a clear-cut MVP, and I think Jalen Hurts is probably going to get it because a combination of last year and this year. But like, what if we get to the end of the year and there's no clear-cut quarterback who's MVP, and Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey are both like worthy of the offensive player of the year? You might just give one of them an MVP.
And you get Christian McCaffrey accepting it.
I would say AJ Brown should be in that conversation as well too.
Yeah, that's a good point. But imagine like on stage how that looks at the NFL awards, McCaffrey accepting it, Olivia Culpo, right next to him and all that. Yeah.
It's like the time Aaron Rodgers won MVP and we were backstage doing reporting, being journalist and, writing stories about the awards at the NFL honors and taking photographs and all that. And Olivia Munn was back there with Aaron Rodgers. It was very like, hey. She's hot stuff back then, man.
You were like this. You're like, oh, hey,
yeah. That's there's a good, funny Shane Gillis bit about that too. He's like, there's an old lefty steps to the plate. Digress.
That's a good one.
I watched it the other day. It's hilarious. We tried to make my dad watch it. He's like, no, I'm good now. Like, oh, I forgot about that part. Flipping to defense, Deron Bland already set the record for most pick sixes in the season. Shout out Cowboys defense and fantasy. Will he finish with the most interceptions in the league? He has 7. Geno Stone with 6. Paulson Adebo has 4, along with Jesse Bates, who had a pick 6 on Sunday. Cam Taylor, Jordan Whitehead also with 4. Does Deron Bland win the interception crown?
Yes.
He's going to win it. It's not even close.
He's going to win it because in part, not only their defense and their pass rush, forcing the ball out, but their offense can get up on teams, right? So from behind, throwing balls, maybe his way. The only problem is like you get a little concerned now, like our team's going to stop throwing at him because he's been so good. If he is going to
throw at Gilmore, they tried that on Sunday. It didn't work on Thursday when they tried it.
How do you throw it either? You just look for another match of someone else.
You go at Jordan Lewis in the slot, which the Seahawks need to do on tomorrow.
But like several of the interceptions, I noticed I really do have the Cowboys defense in like fantasy in a ton of leagues, and like several of these picks of the Panthers pick, the and the Commanders pick, it was like the game was over.
It was already over.
Over junk yardage, and like they're just the quarterback's not even thinking. He's just getting it out quick, and he's just squatting on these routes and housing it.
Well, and that's the thing to Brady's point, right? When you're the Cowboys offense, and they've been unbeatable at home, so it should be an interesting game tomorrow. When you're up by 20-something points, we as defensive linemen, we're putting our ears back. So like the corners are going to be a little bit more aggressive. They usually teach you to play a little bit soft in coverage, but the Cowboys play a lot of man coverage, but if they're playing 2-man where they got help over the top, those corners can sit on everything, Will. So that's exactly what happened in the Commanders game. I mean, Sam Howell was a little late on the outbreaking route. And Brady, you know this, if you're late on outbreaking routes, the ball's going the other way, especially if Deron Bland's over there. So I think Geno Stone is a sneaky one. He's been a ball hawk at the safety position. Same thing with the Baltimore Ravens, right? They're usually either up or they're in close games. And the way that they schematically do things with Mike McDonald, like he can fool you back there, right? And Geno Stone has just been the perfect piece for them. Kyle Hamilton's kind of really solidified that nickel spot for them. But Geno Stone has been their ball hawk in that secondary.
Yeah,
I was trying to look to see
harder to work away from at times, right? Because of the way they can move around and the different things they can do.
I was trying to look to see where Deron Bland would rank on receiving yards in the league.
By the way,
right now.
I'll say this: we haven't talked because we didn't do a show last week. That was like one of the most exciting things that I've watched on Thanksgiving. Like I was rooting for him. Like as soon as it happened, I was like, yes. I was like, go.
And that was amazing by Jim Nance. Hell of a call.
Nance had that call. He's like, history's made.
And I was looking at it, everyone's like, what are you cheering about? Like money on the Cowboys? Like,
that's
no.
Literally history.
You're never going to see that probably in our lifetime. Like that's going to be so hard to see someone replicate that.
Yeah,
unless it just turns into flag football. Like that's only the way.
And what made it so great is he had to make two guys miss. It wasn't just like it was open field. Like he had to make a receiver and the quarterback.
They had to have like a nice return.
Yeah, they should utilize him like on offense. Honestly, like he's got moves. Get the ball in his hands. All right. Speaking of offense, let's talk about.
He's got moves.
He's got Brinson : he's got moves. Back on offense, receiving yards. Lots of players vying for the title in the AFC. Of course, Tyreek Hill, 13-24. Behind him, Keenan Allen at 11-17. And then the NFC side of things, you have CeeDee Lamb at 1,066, A.J. Brown at 1,050, and DJ Moore at 1,003. Amon St. Brown hanging around there at 993. Stephon Diggs probably too far back to make a run on Tyreek Hill there. I mean, pretty sure it's going to be Tyreek Hill, but he's been a little dinged up. I guess you could make a case.
He still plays every week.
Yeah, he's like low key way tougher than like you would. Like, I mean, he just
built like a running back.
Yeah, I would go with CD and Tyreek if I were picking him, only because.
But Tyreek's going to win it. I mean,
I was picking AFC and NFC, but yeah, Tyreek's going to win.
No, just bang for your buck, putting a little bit on CD.
Yeah.
Well, you got to look at it. People were talking about the Seahawks schedule. Have you guys looked at the Cowboys schedule going down the stretch?
Probably, but I forgot.
They got the Eagles, Bills, Seahawks, and the Lions still. Yeah, it's a gauntlet.
but that also means that like they're going to be throwing up the ball a bunch in theory.
And the Miami Dolphins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
dude. But the Dolphins and the Bills defenses and the Lions defenses, like the Cowboys are going to win some fantasy leagues with 15 weeks, 15, 16, 17. Bills, Dolphins, and Lions. Those are scoring teams. Like those teams will score on you, and you're going to have to score on them. So I see all those as big time shootouts. I wouldn't
play the Cowboys defense against that gauntlet though.
I know. Get the Cowboys defense, of course. Well, Deron Bland, they're hard to sit. But yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb could potentially catch Tyreek Hill, but unlikely with the lead he's got. And they got the Commanders and the Titans in the next 2 weeks, which could be big.
I'll say this, right? Because AJ Brown. Go ahead.
Who's more likely to sit out week 18?
AJ, yeah, exactly.
That could be the difference, and it's probably the Dolphins. I'd say at least the way that division's shaking out. Yeah, because if they run away with it, there's no need to play. And the Dallas Cowboys,
if they're vying for the number 1 seed, there's a reason to play, though.
Yeah,
I know they're tied record-wise. I have a hard time believing like they're going to end up being the team vying for it. I feel like Jacksonville, KC probably have a better chance of that. But I mean, look, maybe we'll see. But I think Dallas is the one that, if you look at their division, it's going to be hard to win it with Philly's lead right now.
Yeah, it's tough, especially with their schedule coming up too.
So I think Philly's likely to sit guys in week 18, especially with Hurts being banged up. And they saw like they would have loved to do it last year, they couldn't. AJ Brown, so he's probably sitting. And then if you watch what Miami's done, they've been really cautious about pulling guys out, sitting Devin at Achane. Jalen Phillips gets hurt, so now you really want to be cautious about that. So would not be surprised at all if they sat guys in week if they were clinched the 2-3. Or if they were locked into the 3 or 4 spot and it didn't matter whether they were going to be 3 or 4, maybe they consider doing it. Because at that point, you really have to host. You have to get to the championship game to even get right. If you're the 3 seed, 3 versus 4 seed.
God, I love when you do this. I love when you think out loud on the podcast. We go down this wormhole. Wait, was it 3 to 4? It was. I think ultimately. Like the only things you can guarantee yourself of is like who's the best position to win your division.
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm saying that like if you're the 1 seed, that's huge because you have home field advantage throughout the playoffs to get a bye. Obviously, the 2 seed is huge too because you are going to have home field advantage except for the conference championship game. But the 3 versus the 4 is not negligible, but it's negligible. Is it negligible?
It would depend on a matchup in that case. Here's the other thing: is the personality of the head coaches. Is Mike McCarthy going to sit those players if they are in that scenario you're talking about? Or has he been more apt to play guys in the past? The same thing with Mike McDaniel, who's obviously a little different situation. But I think McCarthy plays them typically more often. Yeah. And
he
obviously,
does.
Mike McDaniel, I don't know if you would. I mean, would you really risk Tua going out there given that?
No.
Or Tyreek Hill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Either.
Unless Tyreek was like unless he was going for the receiving record, then you might roll.
Or like he had a chance at 2000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think, sacks.
We know who it's going to be.
Who are you going to say?
I'm going to say Myles. I mean, Myles Garrett does have the shoulder, but I still think it's going to be Myles
Garrett. He's banged up right now. Yeah, I don't know. I might say TJ Watt because he's already up there above him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll throw out Micah Parsons for the same reasons we said Deron Bland's getting thrown on. He's going to see a lot of dropbacks with this, in these shootouts.
We'll see. I will say this. We talked about comeback player of the year. Khalil Mack should be in that list too.
That's a good look. I like that. Kayvon Thibodeau coming on like
team this year, Brady.
6-1 game.
Josh Allen's an interesting one because when they come in bunches, and that's a team. If you look at the schedule the rest of the way, they could be up on some teams and he'd be balling. And I don't know.
He gets Will Levis again, so that's like 5 more.
Come on, that's not nice.
But they also got the Ravens and Browns, and they're going to run the football.
Yeah, I mean, if you're down, though,
I don't think they play at the Ravens. I don't think the Ravens will be down that game.
Who's going to lead the league in forced fumbles?
Move on.
I have no idea.
Whoever leads the league in sacks.
I don't know if Harry has the. Oh, good. Harry's the man. He's got it up. Trent McDuffie with 5. Bradley Chubb.
That's saying something for a DB to be leading the league in forced fumbles.
Shout out to Bradley Chubb having a great year.
Let me make a play for Josh Metellus. He's not on this. He should be. I feel like he basically
he's balling.
He made someone from the Bears fumble. Like if he has 3 so far, he basically had all 3 of those this past Monday night. Because like every single time he was on the football, he was knocking it out.
He was.
Bradley Chubb having a really good year, by the way.
Yeah, he is. He's bounced back nicely.
Yeah, yes. Maybe he's comeback player of the year. Just kidding. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll mosey on down to Jerry's World. We'll drink some Johnny Walker Blue. We'll talk about mosquito circumcisions. And we'll preview the Seattle-Cowboys Thursday night football game. Next.
You a lawman or an outlaw?
Bit of both, I reckon. Around these parts, we might be men. They're just killers.
You up for the task? I wouldn't be sitting here in my Sunday best if I wasn't. I'm warning you, your wicked days are done.
So dudes looked at me like I was insane when I suggested talking about mosquito circumcisions with Jerry Jones. But that reminds me that you can actually go back and read an article I wrote in 2016 when Tony Romo was still on the Cowboys. And Jerry Jones appeared on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas and was asked about what's the plan for bringing Tony Romo. What's the plan for Tony Romo, to put him on injured reserve, or to, what were they going to do? And Jerry Jones said let's see, what is the full quote? Yes, he said, there is no use circumcising the mosquito on this. There's no one good enough to take the last roster spot. That is apparently an Texarkana style, Texas style saying, circumcising the mosquito.
Texarkana.
All right. Not to get off on a complete tangent, because I know we want to go at the preview real quick. I am curious.
We got to the preview faster than usual, so that's good.
Okay. Mark Cuban selling off his equity stake to the Adelson family. Still maintains the operation, still involved.
And shares.
It's pretty incredible, like what he bought that franchise for, what he's built it into. And there's a lot of speculation at 65, like what he's going to do next. But
run for
it
president?
did make me think about Jerry Jones and Jones family. Like, at what point, based on all the money they've made, what they've built this into, would they be willing to sell off maybe a majority stake of it to someone who wants to get into it for buku's dollars, and maybe still maintain a minority stake or something else? But I don't know. It kind of made me think, like, all right, Mark Cuban's getting out. I know Jerry's up there in age. Maybe he wants to, continue on the rest of his life in the position he's in. But some people want to, sell off a portion and maybe do some other things or enjoy life a little bit more, not be as quite intricately involved. But it's probably not the case for him. But
Stephen Jones is prominently involved. I assume he's just going to take Jerry's place. And William Clay does, is William Clay's the guy, right? Who's basically their GM, but he doesn't get any of the credit. It's kind of hilarious how the Jones family does that. Do you know how much Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys for in 1989?
Was it for?
I think it was like $4 million, right?
60
million.
You
got the number right, but you're short several digits.
What?
140 million.
140.
Okay.
Still, I mean, 140. But I mean, Jeff Bezos will overnight you $140 million, in cash. You get same day delivery, $140 million, and he doesn't notice.
And we'd say it's worth what? I mean, close to $10 billion if it was to sell. Is that fair to say?
I think the Cowboys are the most valuable American sports franchise by a.
They're the most valuable franchise.
No, I don't even think it's American. I think period. Yeah.
Are they more valuable than every side? I didn't want to.
Yeah, I think they are more valuable than Man U.
Wow,
I think it's according to Forbes list.
Forbes, noted journalism, bastard of journalism.
He wants to come up with a list every year, right?
I don't know where they get it, though. It's interesting.
Next thing you're going to tell me the rankings don't matter in U.S. News and whatever for colleges now?
I think NC State's a little low on those. Based on my tilted glasses, I think you can see I'm an academic, Brady. No, I think that I just didn't want to sound like a stupid American and have the comments be like, "There's 15, Premier League franchises worth more than the Cowboys," and sound like an idiot. Oh yeah, I mean, I think you could probably sell for $10 billion. And yeah, there you go. $9 billion current valuation according to Forbes.com and their proprietary algorithm for determining the value net worth of franchises, which is mostly based on their list from the previous year. Anyway, the Cowboys and the Seahawks are playing on Thursday night. Both teams, of course, played on Thanksgiving. So the NFL has been good about that. They try to match up these teams that played on Thanksgiving on that Thursday, so somebody's not getting completely screwed by having a short week, and then the other team had a win. They do an okay job with it.
I mean, they're still screwing both teams. That's two.
Of course, yeah, they're getting screwed at some point. Right. Yeah. Seahawks got absolutely cooked by the Niners.
Yeah,
and the Cowboys feasted on the Commanders' shoddy defense. Rams are sitting there trying to steal a playoff spot from the Seahawks. Is this a must-win game, Brady, for the Seahawks?
I feel like it is for a few reasons. The first is just momentum, coming off that loss to San Fran. That's kind of part of it. I mean, clearly, the next thing would be if you're just talking about their playoff hopes. They got to right the ship. I think offensively more than anything else. That's the thing that's kind of concerning is. It's such a great year last year. And then at times this year, too, you kind of see it. They flash. You see what they're capable of. Yeah. But it's a breakdown in protection here. It's a missed throw, misread, whatever it is. It doesn't seem like it's always going to be clicking. Not having Kenneth Walker for a period of that's obviously hurt them as well. Defensively, I think, again, same thing. At times you're like, man, this defense is good. They can match up. They can make plays. it's hard to get a sense for what this team is. And I think in this matchup, the problem that I'm really most concerned with is you'd seriously on the road versus a team that's like completely different team at home. With that practice to cover and as explosive as their offense, you know what Dallas is going to be in Dallas at home. I can't tell you what Seattle is going to be. Just away from it's hard to predict what that team's going to be. So I think, it feels like a must-win with the way the Rams have continued to play. They got the Browns this week, right? Who we don't even know who the starting quarterback's going to be for the Browns. And they're playing much better football since Cooper came back, Puka Nacua, and then now Kyron Williams too out of the backfield. So you're looking at that offense going, it's a little different than what we thought. So I think you can make the case it's kind of a must-win right now for Seattle.
Rams actually have a higher percent chance to make the playoffs than the Seahawks, despite the Seahawks having a better record.
It's the schedule. That's why. If you look at it, I think what really hurt the Seahawks wasn't even the 49ers game. I just think the 49ers when they're 100% healthy, they make everybody look like that, right? Yeah. The week before when Geno got hurt versus the Rams, right? And even though he got the elbow injury, he still put them in position to win the game. I think they got too conservative at the end of that game and not giving Myers an easier field goal. I think that's the game that's going to come back to bite the Seahawks, right?
Really?
They should have won that game. Yeah, they should have won that game. If you look at the Rams and another team I think that people aren't talking about enough, the Green Bay Packers, I think the Green Bay Packers are going to get better the second half of the season as Jordan Love continues to get more comfortable as a starter. He's played really well the last 3 weeks of the season. But the Seahawks, I don't think it's a must-win just because I think they got to get one of these next three, right? If you look at the last 3 games, the schedule kind of eases up for them. But they got to get at least one of these wins. They got to be able to finish the season, I would say 9-8 at the very worst. And if they do, I think they still have a chance to get in. But the next 3 are a gauntlet for them, right? I think they have the Eagles, they have the Cowboys Thursday, and I think they got the 49ers one more time. So they gotta get one of those games. I don't know which one, but they got to get one.
Here's the thing, though, is like, the Seattle-Arizona series has always been competitive in that division, regardless of where the two teams are. It's always competitive.
Kyler's back, too.
You play Tennessee in Tennessee. They're unbeaten right now at home. That's not as
Jaguars are going to be in trouble week 18.
But all right, you look through their schedule. I would make the case. Again, same thing. If you want to assure yourself a playoff spot, you got to win 4 of their next 6. And with the Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles at Tennessee, Pittsburgh, at Arizona, I don't know, man. I think you maybe could find 3 wins in there, but that's a gauntlet of a schedule.
I believe 2 teams in the NFC will get in at 9-8.
One team in the NFC is going to get it at 7.
Well, of course,
7, 9,
one of the NFC South division winner. Yeah, I mean, then it's who's the next team, which will probably be the 7th, wild card team.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, although you look at the games that they dropped, they got swept by the Rams. Of course, that's what's gonna. They need to split.
That's why I said those 2 games are going to come back to hurt too.
They need to split with the Rams. I mean, you split with the Rams, a division opponent, that happens. They need to win that. They got a weakened Joe Burrow. They should have beaten the Bengals then. I mean, it's just it's tough.
The Rams schedule the rest of the way in comparison to Leger's point. I mean, you're in Cleveland this week. Cleveland's coming to you this week. We don't even know who their quarterback's
defense, man.
Maybe even Myles Garrett's not there. You obviously have Baltimore. That's going to be a tough one. But then Washington and New Orleans at home. And then you have to go to the Giants, to San Francisco, which at that point.
But because the 49ers and the Eagles are playing this week, there's a really good chance that they'll know the Niners and the Eagles will know who the 1 seed is going to be. Because if the Eagles win that game, the Eagles are going to be the 1 seed.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. But if the 49ers win, they got to keep winning. And maybe they need that win at the end, and they play everybody, and that might knock the Rams out.
But the point is, of their next 6 games, if you really look at it, I think it looks like
it's a lot easier than Seahawks.
They're not playing starters, so
they will be favored in all but 2 of those games, and they will be favored in all but 1 of those games if the Niners sit near the starters. All right, so at FanDuel.com, sportsbook.fanduel.com, Cowboys -9. Over under 47.5. Who you got?
A lot.
Everybody's picking the Cowboys to win. So who you got against the spread?
Yeah, I'm laying the points. I think I have a better idea of what Dallas is going to be at home versus what Seattle's going to be in that environment on the road. So I don't love it. I think you can make a case for how Seattle can keep it within the number easily. But I also feel like we see sometimes, whether it's San Francisco or Dallas, some of these teams, even Miami's when they play at home, it's just a different animal, different challenge. Yep. And there's other teams that go on the road. They don't necessarily perform quite the same way. So I'll lay the points.
Well, if you look at it, though, the Seahawks on the road versus NFC teams are 3-0 against the spread this year. Right now, they've struggled on Thursday games. Right, they're 0-3 the last 3 Thursday night games, so something's going to have to give. I just think the big question mark is Kenneth Walker.
It's really a true Thursday game, though, right? I mean, they've had basically
that's true.
Kenneth Walker's the big question with the oblique. I love Zach Charbonnet, but they need Kenneth Walker back like yesterday. I think getting Abraham Lucas back at right tackle is massive for them because they started Jason Peters at right tackle last week. So that, and then DK Metcalf, for some reason, and Brady, you alluded to this, for some reason, DK Metcalf and Geno, it's just been weird. There's certain games where they're just off. Like last week, there were so many times on goal balls, you would see that connection hit all the time last year. Yeah. Last week versus San Fran, one time DK didn't get his feet in bounds. One time Geno sailed the ball, right? And then there was another time that DK dropped the ball. So they need to get that connection back going. I'm taking the Seattle Seahawks +9. I'm going to trust Pete Carroll to get his team ready for them to understand that this is a playoff type game. We talked about the schedule coming up. If they have any inkling of a chance to stay in the playoff hunt, then I don't know if they win this, but I think it's a close game. I think I like the Seahawks +9, even though the Cowboys have been obliterating everybody at home.
Yeah, I begrudgingly got the Seahawks against the spread as well, but terrified of the Cowboys and happy for my fantasy purposes if Dak Prescott goes BANANANAS.
You know what else? I know we got to go, but what's interesting too, Brady, that last game, Tariq Woolen got benched, right? I think that's something the Cowboys, if he's back out there, they're going to try to get him involved in the run game. In those perimeter runs. Tony Pollard's really come on lately the last couple games on those perimeter runs. We know Devin Witherspoon's not afraid to tackle. He loves contact.
He's such a good player.
He's awesome. Yeah, Tariq Woolen is a guy to watch if they put him back in the starting lineup in regards to forcing him to tackle on perimeter runs.
All right. Good stuff, fellas. As always, make sure and hit the like button, subscribe on YouTube, give us a 5-star rating if you're listening on any of your podcast platforms where you might be checking this podcast out. We're back tomorrow with our best bets for week 13. I went 6-0 on the non-Thanksgiving slate. Thank you very much. Don't ask about the Thanksgiving slate. For Brady, for News, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one.